So we're going to be making chocolate chip cookies. You need 125 grams of soft margarine, 175 grams of brown sugar, but if you haven't got brown you can use white, 175 grams of self-raising flour, 50 grams of cocoa powder, 100 grams of chocolate chips and 1 egg. You also need a wooden spoon, a mixing bowl, a baking tray with parchment and a sieve to sieve out the lumps from the flour and cocoa powder. So first of all we're going to add the sugar and the margarine together and beat it with the back of a wooden spoon. I'm going to incorporate the sugar into the margarine so that we've got a good mix going on. This is called the creaming method. To start off with, you need to make sure that your margarine is nice and soft and that it'll pick the sugar up. If it's hard, you need to soften the margarine or the butter that you're using before you can do this, otherwise it won't gather up the sugar and you won't be able to cream it, because what you want it to look like is a soft, creamy mixture. Once you've done this, and the easiest way I've always found is using the back of the spoon, is to squish it against the side of the bowl so that it's actually softening against the side of the bowl and picking up the sugar at the same time. So once you've done that, then you can start to mix it together and beat it together with the wooden spoon. And this is called creaming the sugar and the margarine together. And what you're doing with this is you're incorporating air into the mixture, which will help your end product, your biscuit or your cake, to rise. Now with this one we're using the creaming method for cookies, but you could use it for cupcakes, you could use it for Victoria sponge cakes. The creaming method is a very popular method of cake making. Right, to this I'm now going to add my egg. So I'm going to crack the egg on the side of the bowl and just drop it into the mixture. Then just break the egg up and mix it in so that it is incorporated into the mixture. Now it will look as though it's going to curdle, because it looks a bit strange because the egg and the butter don't mix particularly well, but you just bear with it and keep going at it and it will all come together into a nice smooth mixture, to which you're then going to add all your dry ingredients. Now we're adding cocoa powder, but if you don't want a really chocolatey biscuit, you could take the 50 grams of the cocoa powder out and add another 50 grams of flour. Alright, don't take it out without adding more flour in, otherwise your mixture will be far too wet. I'm going to sieve in 175 grams of self-raising flour. I'm sieving this in. I'm going to incorporate air through sieving it in, but also get rid of any lumps or unwanted bits that might be found in the flour. Okay, so that's going to go into the mixture, and then I'm going to sieve in the cocoa powder. Alright, cocoa powder is by definition always lumpy, so you always need to sieve it through. You don't want a lump of cocoa powder in your mouth. Push that through, and like I said, if you don't want to use cocoa powder, just add 50 grams more of the flour. And then I'm going to add in 100 grams of chocolate chips. Now these are plain chocolate chips, but you could use milk, you could use milk and plain, you could use white, milk and plain. You could even put dried fruit in if you wanted. Okay, so very carefully now I'm mixing in the dry ingredients to the wet. So I'm folding it over, I'm not beating it, I'm not mixing it manically, I'm just gradually folding in the dry ingredients to the wet. You don't want to over mix this. If you over mix it, you're going to end up with something that looks like a wet cake mixture, and what you want is a semi-dry dough, because you're going to put your hands in this in a minute and you're going to shape the dough into balls at the size of golf balls to make your individual cookies. Okay, so once you've got clumps forming, even though it still looks a bit dry, this is where you get your hands in there. Okay, this is the best bit. All right, get your hands nice and grubby and dirty and sticky and chocolatey. Just use one hand, then you've got a clean hand to do anything else that you need to do. Okay, so I'm squeezing this together now to get it into a dough. And again, don't overwork it. If you overwork it, it will go too wet and too sticky, and it will then not shape into the balls that you want for the cookies. Once you have mixed this in, you can see the dough is sticking to my fingers. Clean your fingers, get all the dough off, and wash your hands before you start to shape your biscuits. Okay, get a size, about the size of a golf ball, squish it in your hands and rub them together and roll it into a ball. So you're squishing it in your hands and then rolling into a ball. I'm quite sure some of you have had some practice with this with the snow recently. So, all right, squish it into your hands and then roll it into a ball. And then you're going to make about 10, 12, depending on how big your portions are. Okay, make sure you space them out on your baking tray because they will spread slightly in the oven when they're baking. Okay, so you just keep doing this until you get to the end of your mixture, and then you end up with all the balls on your baking tray. So make sure they're spread out and then just flatten them slightly. You don't need to squish them really flat. We're not rolling them out or anything. Just push them down to about a centimetre thick so that they can spread a little bit when they cook. Make sure there's space between them. These will then go into the oven for about 12 to 14 minutes on electric 180, gas mark 5. And this is your finished results. Okay? Now, don't try and take them straight off the baking tray when they come out of the oven because they are soft. They need to be left to cool a little bit on your tray to harden up. Once they've hardened up, you'll be able to just lift them off like that. Okay? And these are absolutely delicious. You will love them. They're so tasty.